Hi, I want to update this channel's viewers on a few things. The first is that I am more relaxed and happier than I have been in a long time. I guess I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, but I don't see another shoe on the horizon, so maybe there isn't another shoe to drop. I'm doing a lot of learning, a lot of creating, and I'm having basically a really good time in everything I do. I have one consulting client that I work 10 to 15 hours a week for, and the rest of my time is divided between photography, my watchmaker classes, and setting up my home workshop, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes. I've started my classes at the Norwest School of Horology. These are the night school classes that meet one day a week. Through the summer of 2025, I'm going to be taking 3 classes, what they call Watch 101, 102, and 103. And I've taken my second class of Watch 101. It's a rank beginner class, very nuts and bolts. And so far it's a lot of fun. I have learned a lot about picking up very small screws with tweezers. I have had my first movement casualty. I'll talk about that in a sec. And in class, we're working on removing the bridges and removing and then putting back the gear train of a fairly large pocket watch sized partial movement. Yes, this movement is upside down. If I turned it right side up so that the engraving was legible, the perspective of the photo would be strange because it was sitting on my workbench upside down when I took the photo, so I'm going to keep it that way. For magnification, while we work on mechanical watches, there are 3 most commonly seen forms of magnification. There's a loupe, which you wear on your head over an eye. There are visors that have magnification built in that you can wear over both eyes over your head. And then there are lenses that you can attach to eyeglasses, and you can flip the lenses down, anywhere from 1 to 3 of them to get different levels of magnification. So here's what I look like wearing a loupe, and I've decided to wear a loupe because I think it looks moderately badass. I have my eyeglasses on a strap, so I just remove them from the ears, let them dangle, put on my loupe, and I look like a Borg, and I'm good to go. The plan is still for me to practice a lot at home and to take the Norwest Horology classes and then reapply for my bench test to WTI in January. And I am hoping, expecting, assuming, wishing that I will pass the bench test for WTI in January, and then I can start at WTI in the fall of 2025. I've also had my first movement casualty. What you see here is the Seagull ST36, also called the ST3600. It's 36.6 millimeters in diameter, so if you make a watch out of this, it'll be on the hefty side. A friend of mine gave me one of these movements to practice on at home. Interestingly, this movement was first made, I think, by ETA, and then it was picked up by another company. The copyright has expired, and it's in the public domain now, so anyone can manufacture these and sell these, and in fact, there are Chinese companies that do that. You can buy these on eBay for a lot less than the list price, anywhere from $35 to $45, depending upon who you're buying it from and whether you feel like doing a buy it now or trying for a lower auction price. Anyway, so I was working on it at home, taking it apart, actually before my first class, and I was clumsy, and I managed to snap off pins off the bottom of 2 gears, and so the thing can't ever be put together correctly now, so sorry about that. Dumped it in the trash, and I bought 2 others on eBay. In fact, this is one right here that I got. It's in a plastic case at the moment, but it's ticking away, and I'm going to be taking apart this puppy after I do this video. And so I bought 2 more of these, planning for the future. In case I kill this one, I have a 3rd one coming in the mail. You can actually buy kits with these. You have this, you put it in a case, you pop on a dial, you pop on hands and get a crystal, and poof, you can make your own watch. I've been stocking up for my home workshop. I think I told you 2 videos ago that I was going to take my stand-up desk, sort of divide it in half. One half was going to be software engineering, the other half was going to be watchmaking. Well, based upon the amount of stuff that I have to buy, even as a rank beginner for these classes, the entire desk is now going to be for watchmaking, and I'm going to buy a small 4-foot wide mini desk to do software engineering. Let me show you some of the things that I bought. The first is I bought a small vise for my metalworking. I may outgrow this vise in a bit. It's an antique vise. I mean, there's nothing magical about it. It's not like it's worth money, but it's an old used vise, and I'll be using this for my metalworking. I can attach to the vise device, a pin. If you're cutting a brass bar, you can mount the bar on here, and you have a hacksaw that you cut into it, and if you go all the way through and cut into the wood, that's not a problem. Speaking of brass bars, I have a couple of brass bars in the mail. This photograph makes them look huge, but they're actually quite a bit smaller than you might think from the photograph. I'll be cutting these up and doing other filing and cutting on them to improve my control of metal files and of the hacksaw. Speaking of which, I bought a jeweler's hacksaw. I also bought a metal filing kit with some initial beginner metal files, and I'm sure once I really get into this, I'll want to buy special files a la carte, but a kit was the best way to start for now. Let's see, what else do I have? LED desk lamp for illumination over my workbench. 350 finger cots. Finger cots are little prophylactics that you put on your fingers so that you don't get your finger oil or dirt on a mechanism if you're actually moving the movement around in the holder. Yes, something else. A friend of mine asked, what's this movement holder that you're buying? Well, here's what's coming in the mail. The idea behind a movement holder is you don't want to place a movement that you're working on flat on your workbench mat and start working on it, because on the other side of most movements is more delicate stuff, and you don't want that resting on a surface. So this movement holder is a general one. It's made out of plastic. Plastic won't, of course, scratch metal. So the idea is that you plunk the movement into this gizmo and you tighten the crown, and it clamps the movement on the edges. So it's elevated off your workbench, and if you do need to examine it, you can pick it up by the movement holder and not touch the movement at all. And I have other things coming, a black light, a utility light, a parch tray. It is amazing to me, it's actually kind of comical how much stuff even a rank beginner has to buy to get started in this. So a lot of stuff is coming, and I need the full desk just to have all this stuff in front of me. Another thing that I have coming are hairsprings. Let me go back to the ST3600. Underneath the big gear at the top of the photo is the mainspring barrel, which provides power to the watch. The gizmo down at the bottom is the escapement. It regulates the power so that instead of the mainspring unrolling all in one go, it regulates the power, and in fact, it's the escapement that gives you the tick-tock of the watch. Inside of the escapement is a hairspring, which is what these things are. So I bought a bunch of these, and what I'm going to be doing is manipulating them with tweezers and practicing what was on the WTI bench test that I didn't do well at, and presumably when I retake it in January, there'll be the same kind of test or something very close to it. Interesting little factoid, when these suckers go, they go 1,000,000 miles. They have very little mass, and they're coiled springs, and if you happen to let it snap back because you're pulling on it and it slips out of one tweezer, these suckers go like 1,000,000 miles away, boing, and they are gone. In fact, during the bench test, that happened to me twice. One of my hairsprings flew off, and I was able to find one of them and wasn't able to find the other one. It's still on the floor somewhere in the classroom. The next thing I want to talk about is photography. I got back my F2 from repair, and it's in great shape. There was a little niggling problem with the metering head. All the stuff in there is mechanical. There's a linkage between the lens and the camera body. In the original Nikon F mount, there was a meter coupling prong on the back of the lens that mated with a bayonet on the camera body, and so when you turned the aperture ring, that was the communications mechanism to tell the metering head what aperture the lens was set at. And the really neat thing is all of this was done mechanically. You're talking about springs and levers and custom designed, irregularly shaped ratchets that have to reset when the lens is removed, and then when you attach a lens, it syncs up again with wherever the aperture ring is on the lens that you've just attached, and all of this was done mechanically. That whole mechanism was a little sticky, so I had to send it out for repair. It came back and it works great now. I've discovered that I enjoy street photography, and I'm experimenting with different things. I have been experimenting with blur, both unintentional blur and manufactured blur by moving the camera as you take a photo. I also am experimenting a bit with reflections off of windows, reflections off of puddles and waters or wet pavement, right? Reflection of light that's broken up by the wet pavement and then reflected up into the camera. And it's fun. It's scratching an itch. I don't know that it's going to go anywhere except for my own aesthetic satisfaction. Dare I say it, I'm being a little artistic. And And it's not something that's normal for me, or that's certainly very common, not something I ever dabbled with for the past 40 years. And it feels good. And I've actually started another channel. It's John's Film Photography. My intention is to do one video per week on this channel and one video per week on this other channel, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be a completely different kind of channel, focusing only on photography. I'm going to be sharing what I'm doing, good and bad. In fact, I had a very interesting thing happen recently. I shot a roll of expired film again. This film was expired for 50 years. And I'll be talking about the results of that and some very comical things I discovered about this expired film along the way. I'll be talking about all that in the other channel. Also on photography, one last bit of news. I've discovered the Photographic Center Northwest. It has certificate programs and workshops. For the first time ever in my life, I'm thinking about taking a workshop or two, and that's something that I would have never considered doing even as recently as 4 months ago, certainly not any time earlier in my life. And I don't know how to say this, but I wasn't planning on this retirement, but it feels good. It feels good to not be locked into something and to have options and to know that you can still learn new things and experience the thrill of an uncertain journey at the end of which is no guarantee of success. And that's the sort of thing that makes life, worth living. I'm having a blast. I'm having more of a blast now than I have in, many a year. And I'm very happy to be where I am now and have all these different things bubbling around in my head. And that's what I have to report. Till next time, take care.